The night was cold. Wind moved through the broken metal of the fallen colony, howling like a ghost. Broken towers stood like bones against the red sky. Dust covered everything, and through this silent wasteland, a lonely figure walked. She was young. Her feet were bare and bleeding from the sharp stones. Her clothes were only scraps of torn cloth tied around her thin body. Every step was slow, heavy, and without hope. Her eyes, once bright, now looked empty, like glass after the fire goes out. She had no name now. Long ago, her people had called her something beautiful, but no one spoke it anymore. Everyone she knew was gone, burned in the war, lost to the sky. Her home was ashes, her family only memories, and her heart felt like a hollow stone. She moved through the ruined streets hoping to find something, anything. Maybe food, maybe cloth, maybe just a corner to hide in. But the place was dead. Machines lay like fallen giants. Metal walls were torn apart by bombs. Smoke still rose from black holes in the ground. She stopped when she heard voices. Human voices. She pressed herself against a broken wall and watched. A group of settlers walked by carrying light sticks and metal tools. Their eyes caught her for a moment. She hoped maybe they would help her. Maybe they would see she was only hungry and lost. But they looked at her like she was an animal. "Look," one of them whispered. "It's one of them." "She should not be here," said another. "They bring curses." They threw small stones at her. One hit her shoulder. Pain shot through her thin body. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just turned and ran until her breath burned and her legs gave out. She fell behind a broken transport ship, chest heaving, and stayed hidden until the voices were gone. Tears slipped down her dirty cheeks. She curled up against the cold metal and hugged her knees. The night grew colder. Stars filled the red sky, like silent witnesses. She felt so small, so invisible, so forgotten. In the silence, her stomach growled like a trapped creature. She pressed her hands to it. There was nothing to eat. She had eaten nothing for 2 days. Only water from a cracked pipe had kept her alive. But she was not sure she wanted to be alive anymore. Her mind whispered dark things. No one cares. No one is coming. You are nothing now. She closed her eyes tight, trying not to listen. And then she felt it. A gaze. She opened her eyes slowly, heart beating fast. Someone was watching her. In the shadows near the skeleton of an old machine, a human figure stood. Still. Silent. Just watching. She froze like a hunted creature. Fear clawed through her chest. Humans were dangerous. Humans had destroyed her world. If he came closer, she would run. But her legs were too weak to run far. Her breath came in short gasps. The figure stepped forward. A beam of pale moonlight touched his face. It was a man. Tall, wrapped in a dark coat, his boots crunching softly on the broken ground. His eyes glowed faintly from a helmet visor, scanning her like a machine. He said nothing. Her heart hammered. He reached into his coat slowly, like he didn't want to scare her. She pressed, her back against the cold metal. Her fingers curled into claws. She thought he would pull a weapon, but he pulled out a blanket, soft, clean, warm. He walked closer, kneeling down a few steps away from her. He laid the blanket on the ground between them, not touching her, not forcing, just placing it there gently, like a gift. She stared at it, then at him, then back at it. Her lips trembled. "Cold," he said quietly, his voice deep and calm. "You are cold." His words were strange, but she understood. A single word. Cold. Yes. She was cold. So cold her teeth hurt. He pushed the blanket a little closer, still staying low, still not reaching out. His eyes were calm. Not cruel. Not like the others. For a long time, she didn't move. Wind howled around them. Dust danced in the moonlight. He stayed silent, like a statue made of patience. Finally, her shaking hands reached out. Slowly, carefully, she grabbed the blanket and pulled it to her chest like it was made of stars. She wrapped it around her thin shoulders. Warmth touched her bones for the first time in many days. It felt like touching the sun. She looked at him again. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. He nodded once as if that was enough. Then he stood up, quietly, slowly. He turned to leave, boots crunching on broken stones. She watched him walk away until the darkness swallowed him. Then she curled into the blanket, her body trembling not from cold now, but from something strange. Hope. Tiny, fragile, like the first spark in the ashes. And she did not know why, but in her heart, she wished he would come back. The next night came like a quiet shadow. She stayed hidden inside the wrecked transport ship, wrapped tightly in the human's blanket. It still smelled of smoke and metal, but it was warm. It felt strange on her skin. Soft, safe. She had not felt safe in so long that she had almost forgotten what the word meant. But her mind was full of questions. Who was he? Why did he help her? Why didn't he kill her like the others tried to? She could not stop thinking about the human, man who had placed the blanket without a word. She told herself he would not return. Humans never came back for her people. Still, part of her waited. Hours passed. Wind rattled broken metal. The stars rose above the ruins like silent lamps. Then she heard footsteps. Her body tensed. Her breath stopped. A figure stepped out from the darkness. It was him, the same human man moving slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal. His boots crunched on the stones. His helmet visor glowed faint gold from the moonlight. In his hands was a small metal box. She pressed her back against the wall, heart racing. He stopped a few steps away and slowly lowered the box on the ground. Then he stepped back, raising his hands to show they were empty. Food, he said softly. The word was strange but familiar. Food. She understood. The smell reached her nose. Warm, sweet, real. Her stomach twisted with hunger. But she did not move. He waited. Silent. Still. A statue of patience again. Finally, she crawled forward on her hands and knees. Her thin fingers touched the edge of the box. She opened it carefully, ready to run if it exploded. But it didn't. Inside were soft bread squares and glowing fruit pieces from a ration pack. She took one bite. Her whole body shivered. It was warm. Real. Alive. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. He saw the tears and said nothing. He only sat down on a broken metal beam nearby, keeping his distance. His gaze was steady but gentle, like light from a quiet star. She ate slowly, every bite a silent miracle. She didn't remember the last time her stomach felt full. When she finished, she licked her fingers clean and then hid her hands under the blanket, as if ashamed of kneading. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then he spoke. Name, he asked gently, pointing at her chest. Your name. Her lips parted. Her old name rose in her mind like a ghost. It hurt to remember. It was the last thing her mother had called her before the fire came. She whispered it. It came out broken and soft like a dying song. But he heard it. He nodded once, repeating her name slowly, carefully, as if it was precious. Then he pointed to himself. Cade, he said. His voice was calm, like water. Cade. She repeated it quietly. The name felt strange on her tongue, but not sharp, not cruel. Cade smiled slightly. The smallest smile, quick as a shooting star. Then he reached into his coat again and pulled out a small silver flask. He placed it on the ground between them, just like the blanket and the food. Water, he said. She took it with shaking hands. Cold water washed down her dry throat like rain after drought. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she almost forgot the ashes, the screams, the endless running. When she opened her eyes, he was still there, still watching her, but not like the others had, not with hate, not with fear, with something else, something she could not name. He slowly looked up at the night sky, the stars reflected in his visor. He spoke again, his voice quiet but steady. "You don't have to run," he said. "Not anymore." Her heart thumped. The words were simple, but they cracked something inside her chest like light breaking into darkness. She stared at him, afraid to believe, afraid it was a trick. Then he said it, soft, firm, like a promise. "Stay with me forever." The words wrapped around her like the blanket had, warm, impossible. She didn't understand why a human would say such a thing. She didn't even know if he meant it. But the sound of it lit a tiny spark in her chest. Hope. A spark she thought had died. Cade stood slowly and stepped back into the shadows. "Tomorrow," he said, pointing to the broken ship where she stayed. "I come back." Then he was gone. The wind whispered through the ruins. She sat alone again, holding the blanket, the empty food box, and the strange new spark in her heart. For the first time since the war, she whispered a single word to the stars, a word she hadn't spoken in years. Maybe. Dawn came soft and pale, like tired light washing over broken bones. The girl opened her eyes to silence. Cold air brushed her face, but under the blanket, her body was warm. She blinked at the ceiling of twisted metal above her and wondered if last night had been a dream. Cade, the human, the food, the water, his words, "Stay with me, forever." The sound of it still echoed in her head like a secret song. She sat up slowly, bones stiff from sleeping on hard metal. The world outside her broken shelter was quiet, only the wind whispering through the ruins. For a moment she thought he would not return. Maybe he had lied. Maybe humans always left. Then, footsteps. Her heart jumped. Cade's shadow appeared at the entrance. He stepped inside, ducking under the bent metal. This time he carried more, a folded sheet, a bundle of fabric, and a small glowing lamp. She watched from the corner, wrapped tightly in the blanket like a frightened animal. Cade placed the things down carefully, not looking at her at first. He moved slowly, as if he knew sudden movement might break her. "Place," he said gently, tapping the ground. "For you." She frowned, not understanding. He opened the sheet on the floor. Dust floated in the dim light. He spread a soft blanket over it. Then he opened the bundle, clean clothes, stitched from gray survival cloth, small enough for her, thin frame. He placed them neatly beside the bedding. She stared, her lips parted, eyes wide. No one had ever given her anything. Not like this. Cade turned on the glowing lamp and set it near the bedding. Soft golden light filled the cold space, pushing the shadows away. Her eyes reflected the light like two small stars. He looked at her then, not smiling, not forcing, just calm. "Home," he said simply. The words struck her like thunder. Home. Her throat tightened. She had not had a home since the fire took everything. The idea of one seemed impossible, dangerous, like believing in ghosts. But Cade stood back, letting her choose. She stayed still for a long moment. Then, slowly, she moved. Her feet touched the new bedding. It was soft, warm. She sank down onto it like falling into a dream. She touched the cloth with shaking fingers, then pulled her hands back quickly, as if it might vanish if she touched too long. Cade watched quietly. After a while, he spoke again. "Change," he said, pointing to the clothes. Then he turned his back and faced the wall, giving her space. No one had ever done that either. She hesitated, then slowly removed her torn rags. They fell to the ground like dead leaves. She dressed in the clean clothes. They were soft and warm against her skin. She almost didn't recognize herself when she looked down. She looked Alive. Done, she said softly. Cade turned back and nodded once. Good, he said. They sat together on the floor for a while. The quiet was not heavy like before. It was soft like the air before rain. He took out a small device and pressed a button. A low hum came from it, and then gentle music floated out. Soft notes, like wind through trees. She froze. The sound stirred something deep inside her. Long ago, her people had sung like this while planting the crystal flowers. Her mother used to hum this way at night when the stars were bright. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Cade saw the tears and lowered the volume. Okay? He asked softly. She wiped her face quickly and nodded. Okay. They sat in the golden glow, listening to the soft music. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders again, but not from cold this time. From comfort. After a while, Cade stood. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. His visor glowed faintly in the dim light. I fix more, he said. Make safe. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood enough. He was going to make this place safer, stronger, a shelter, a fragile one, but hers. He stepped out into the pale daylight. His boots crunched on broken stones until the sound faded away. She lay down on the soft bedding, eyes on the lamp's gentle glow. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel hunted. She didn't feel like nothing. She felt like maybe she belonged. And somewhere deep inside her chest, the tiny spark grew a little brighter. Days began to pass like soft echoes. Slow, quiet, different. The girl woke every morning inside her new little shelter. The lamp still glowed faintly, keeping the shadows away. The clean blanket held her like a gentle cloud. Outside, the ruins stayed silent, but inside, something had changed. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Cade came each day, always silent at first, always careful. Sometimes he brought food packs, sometimes water, and sometimes just himself. At first, she stayed quiet. She sat far away while he worked on the broken walls, fixing cracks, moving debris, sealing holes. She watched with wary eyes like a small animal who still might run. But Cade never rushed her, never shouted, never touched. He worked in silence, humming softly as he welded scraps of metal into place. The warm hum of his torch made her feel calm, though she did not understand. Why, the one afternoon he came with something new, a small book with soft, worn pages. She tilted her head, confused. Words, he said, tapping it gently. Learn. She stared. He pointed at a symbol. Star, he said slowly. Then he pointed at the sky outside the cracked roof. Star. Her eyes followed his finger. The sky was pale blue, but she knew when night came the stars would shine. Star, she repeated quietly. Her voice was rough from silence, but the word was clear. Cade's lips curled in a tiny smile. He pointed to himself. Cade. She pointed to him too. Cade. Then she pointed to her chest, whispered her own name again. He nodded, saying it softly, carefully, like it was something sacred. For the first time, hearing her name didn't hurt. Every day they learned one or two words. Water, light, safe, home. Each word was like a little stone on a broken bridge between their worlds. And slowly she began to step across. One evening, when the sky turned orange like fire and gold, Cade brought something else, a small music device again. He placed it in the middle of the shelter and pressed play. Soft human music floated through the air, calm, slow, gentle. She froze. The notes wrapped around her like warm wind. Her mother used to hum like this before the war. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Cade noticed. He reached to turn it off, but she raised her hand quickly. No, she whispered. He paused, then nodded and let the music play. She sat beside him for the first time, not far across the shelter. They listened together, silent. Two lost souls under the same fading sky. Later that night, the wind howled outside. Dust swept across the broken streets. She lay curled in her blanket, pretending to sleep, but her eyes stayed open. She kept glancing at Cade. He was sitting by the entrance, helmet off for the first time. His dark hair was messy, his face tired but calm. He sharpened a metal tool slowly, his eyes soft in the lamp's glow. She had never seen a human's real face up close. It was not frightening. It was quiet. Safe. She didn't know why, but her chest ached. Her voice broke the silence. "Why?" she asked softly. Cade looked up, blinking. "Why?" she pointed to herself. Her thin fingers touched her chest, her new clothes, the soft bed, the lamp, the food pack stacked in the corner. "Why, me?" Cade stared at her for a long moment. His eyes were deep, unreadable, like the space between stars. Then he said quietly, "Because no one else did." The words hit her like a storm. So simple, so sharp. No one else did. And he had. Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned. She turned her face into her blanket quickly, hiding the tears. Cade said nothing more. He went back to sharpening his tool, slow and steady, letting her cry in silence. For the first time she cried not from pain, but from something else. Something soft. Something terrifying. Trust. It was small, fragile, but it was real. And in the quiet glow of their shelter, something new was born between them. Not just survival, not just safety, something warmer. The days became gentle. The ruins were still broken, but inside the small shelter, life began to bloom like a shy flower. Each morning, the girl woke on her soft bedding. Each night she fell asleep listening to Cade's calm voice teaching her new words. She smiled now. Not often, not wide, but real. And every time she smiled, Cade's eyes grew softer. Then one sharp morning the world changed again. She was outside the shelter gathering metal scraps in her small hands. The pale sun was rising through the cracked towers. She liked the quiet here now. It didn't feel haunted anymore, but then voices. Loud, harsh, human voices. Her body froze. Her breath caught. She dropped the metal pieces and ran back inside the shelter. Her heart pounded like a war drum. She crouched behind the bedding, clutching the blanket around her. The voices grew louder, and then boots. Heavy boots crushing. Stones outside. Cade was at the door, standing still like a shadow made of steel. His jaw was tight. His visor glowed cold. She had never seen his eyes look like that before. 3 human soldiers stepped into the ruined street. Their armor was clean, shining, not like Cade's worn coat. They held rifles low but ready. Their helmets clicked as they scanned the area. "Sergeant Cade," the tallest one said. His voice was sharp as a blade. "Stand down." Cade didn't move. "Commander," he said flatly. The commander's gaze shifted past him and locked on her. She shrank back, clutching the blanket. "There," one of the soldiers hissed. "An alien." "She's not supposed to be here," the other said. "They're restricted. This zone is clean." "Not clean," the commander corrected coldly. "Contaminated. Remove her." The words cut like knives. She understood enough to feel them like poison. "No," Cade said. The commander blinked. "No." "She stays," Cade said firmly. The commander stepped forward. His boots cracked glass underfoot. "Sergeant, this is an order. That thing is a threat." "She's not a thing," Cade said. His voice was low, calm, but like thunder waiting. The soldiers raised their rifles a little higher. Their visors glowed red. She trembled, eyes wide, breath sharp. The warm safety she had built inside this place shattered like thin glass. The commander's tone turned hard. "Stand aside or face arrest," Cade moved. Not away. Forward. He placed himself between her and their guns. His coat spread like dark wings as he raised his arms. Then arrest me, he said. The silence cracked like lightning. Even the wind seemed to stop. The soldiers looked at each other, confused. The commander's jaw tightened. You've gone soft, he spat. You risk court-martial for a creature that doesn't even speak your language. She speaks, Cade said. His voice didn't shake. And she matters. The commander raised his hand. She didn't wait. Terror exploded inside her chest. Her legs moved before her mind could think. She darted past Cade like a shadow, the blanket falling from her shoulders. Wait! Cade shouted. But she ran. Ran through the ruins, through broken towers, through the cold, biting wind. Her bare feet slapped the ground. Her lungs burned. She didn't look back. She ran until the voices vanished, until the ruins ended and the wild cliffs began, until her body collapsed against a stone and she could not breathe. Tears blinded her eyes. She pressed her hands to her chest, heart slamming like it would break. Cade had stood in front of guns for her. For her, she wanted to go back. Every piece of her wanted to go back. But fear was stronger. Fear screamed that if she stayed, the soldiers would kill him. Because of her. Because she didn't belong. Because she had ruined everything again. The wind howled over the cliffs. The sea below roared against black stone. She curled into a ball and wept until her voice broke. Back in the ruins, distant and faint, the commander's voice echoed like iron. Take him. And the sound of boots dragged Cade away. Night fell like black glass over the cliffs. Cold wind cut across the rocks and whipped through her hair as she sat hidden in the shadows, knees pulled tight to her chest. Her whole body shook. Not from the cold, from fear. She saw it again and again when she closed her eyes. Cade standing between her and the soldiers, coat spread like wings. And then the sound of boots, dragging him away. Because of her, she had run. Left him. The thought burned like fire under her ribs. He had protected her, and she had abandoned him. Tears dried on her cheeks as the stars blinked awake above the dark sky. The sea roared far below, black and endless. Hours passed, but her mind would not rest. She remembered the first blanket he gave her. The way he sat, far away so she wouldn't feel trapped. The way he said her name softly like it was something worth keeping. The way he whispered, "Stay with me forever." Her chest hurt. Her breath came sharp and fast. No one else did, he had said. And he had been right. No one had ever cared for her. No one, except him. She stood up slowly, legs trembling. She couldn't leave him. Not now. Not ever. She moved like a shadow across the rocks. Her eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, sharp with silent fire. The human base was far, on the edge of the dead city. Tall walls of black steel stood like teeth, lit by red, warning lights. Drones floated overhead like silent predators. She crouched in the ruins, studying the patrol patterns. 2 guards at the west gate, 1 at the north tower, a sensor beam sweeping every 12 seconds. Her people had once been hunters. Silent. Clever, fast. She remembered. She waited for the beam to pass, then slipped under it like smoke. She crept through dead grass, crawling under a supply truck as boots passed by. Her heart beat like drums in her skull. Every step was death, but she kept moving. Inside the base, the air stank of oil and fire. Lights burned white against cold, metal walls. She followed the sound of voices. Soldiers spoke in clipped words she barely understood. Cade disobeyed orders. Locked in cell 3. Cell 3. Her eyes narrowed. She slipped into a storage hall and found a panel half broken. Wires sparked faintly. She pushed her small hands inside and twisted, just like her father used to fix the power vines long ago. The lights above her flickered and went out. Shouts echoed down the halls. Perfect. In the confusion, she darted down the corridor, feet silent as breath. She found the cell block, cold, dark, lined with steel doors. "Cade," she whispered. And then she saw him. Through the bars of cell 3, he sat chained to the wall. His head was bowed, his coat was torn. But when he heard her whisper, his head lifted slowly, his eyes widened. "You came back," he breathed. Her throat ached. She knelt by the lock, pulling the tools she had stolen from the storage hall. Her fingers shook, but her mind burned clear. "You saved me," she whispered. "Now I save you." The lock clicked open. Cade stared in stunned silence as she slipped inside, broke the cuffs, and pulled his arm over her shoulder. He staggered, weak from the beating, but his steps matched hers. Alarm sirens screamed suddenly, red lights flashing through the dark. "No," Cade hissed. "Run," she said simply. They ran. Boots thundered behind them. Voices shouted orders. Bullets sparked off the walls. They sprinted through the chaos, through the smoke, through the red light, through the shadowed maze of metal halls. She moved like wind. He moved like fire. Together they crashed through a side gate just as it slammed down. A drone swooped low. Cade threw a pipe like a spear, smashing it from the air. They stumbled into the ruins, panting, hearts wild. The alarms faded behind them. They stopped only when the black cliffs rose again around them and the base lights were gone. They fell to their knees in the cold grass, gasping. Cade turned to her slowly. His face was pale, tired, but his eyes burned. "You came?" he said, voice broken. She nodded, breathless. "I had to." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Small, shaky, real. They sat in silence, listening to the sea crash below. Two souls, lost and found again. And for the first time, she didn't feel like nothing. She felt like his. The night sky stretched wide and endless, black velvet covered in stars. Cold wind swept across the cliffs, carrying the roar of the dark sea below. They sat side by side in silence, breathless, exhausted, alive. Cade's arm was wrapped in torn cloth where blood had dried. Her hands were scratched and bruised, but steady. They had escaped. Somehow. She stared at him from the corner of her eyes. His face was pale in the moonlight. But his eyes still burned. Not with anger. Not with fear. With something fierce. Something warm. Something she didn't understand but could feel. When the sun began to rise, he stood slowly. His movements were stiff but strong. He looked out over the broken city, then down at her. "They will come again," he said quietly. "Soldiers. Orders. Chains." She lowered her eyes. Fear stirred like cold water inside her chest. She had nowhere else to go. No world. No people, only him. Cade knelt in front of her, his hand light on her shoulder. His voice softened. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll hunt us both." She nodded slowly. "Then where?" she whispered. He looked toward the horizon. Far beyond the ruins, the black sky met the first light of dawn. Stars faded one by one as if making room for something new. "Anywhere," he said. "Everywhere." She tilted her head, confused. Cade smiled faintly. "Out there," he said, pointing to the sky. "The stars. We take a ship. We leave this world." Her eyes widened. Leave this world? The thought was huge, terrifying, beautiful. Could she really escape this place of ashes? Could she live somewhere else? Free? She wrapped the blanket tighter, around her shoulders, thinking. She saw again how the soldiers looked at her like she was nothing, how they would never stop. But Cade had stood against them, for her. And when she had run, he had still forgiven her. She looked at him fully then. The man who had given her a blanket, food, words, hope. Her lips trembled. "Together?" she asked. Cade's eyes softened like dawn light on still water. Always, he said, then quietly, stay with me. Forever. The words wrapped around her like warmth in winter. She nodded, slowly, firmly. Yes. They moved through the ruins as the sun climbed higher. Cade led her to an old hangar hidden beneath a shattered tower. Inside lay a small shuttle covered in dust and vines. Its silver frame was cracked, but still whole. Cade ran his hands over its surface, whispering softly like he was waking a sleeping beast. He climbed inside and began pressing glowing panels, reconnecting power cells, adjusting old wires. Sparks danced like tiny stars. She watched silently, heart pounding. This was real. They were leaving. She carried fuel canisters and old tools to him, her hands steady even though her legs trembled. He smiled each time she brought something, and it made her chest feel warm and bright. Hours passed. Then, a deep hum shook the air. Lights flickered on across the shuttle's hull. The engines breathed like sleeping dragons. Cade grinned, grease on his cheek. She flies, he whispered. She stepped close, eyes wide as the shuttle door opened, with a hiss. Inside was small but clean. Safe. There were 2 seats. He climbed into the pilot's chair and patted the one beside him. Yours, he said. She stared for a moment, then climbed in. Her hands gripped the edge of the seat, heart racing. Cade tapped glowing controls. The engines roared softly, rising like thunder from deep earth. The hangar door creaked open. Sunlight spilled across the cracked floor. Wind rushed in, wild and cold. Cade glanced at her. You ready? He asked. She looked out at the broken world, the ruins, the ashes, the place that had almost killed her. Then she looked at him, and for the first time in her life, she smiled without fear. Yes, she said. The shuttle rose with a great shudder. Dust stormed below as its engines lifted it higher, higher, past the dead towers, past the black cliffs, past the broken city. The world fell away beneath them. Above, the sky turned dark and endless. Stars burned like a million tiny suns. She reached out her hand. Cade took it gently. And as the stars opened before them like a new world, she whispered, voice soft but strong, I'm home. Cade smiled, eyes shining. Forever, he said. The shuttle vanished into the sea of stars, carrying with it 2 souls who had been lost and had found each other.